Hello and welcome to another FPL video. If you are new to this channel, please do subscribe if you like the content that you're listening to, and of course if you do like the content, definitely give this a like, please. Give us a thumbs up. Really does help the algorithms out there. I was going to drop a video yesterday, but I got well, I was plugged in building a fixture ticker for the start of the season because fixtures, as I've said in previous videos, are quite important at the start of the season. So it's definitely a good idea to keep in the back of your mind which teams start the season quite strongly with their set of fixtures. But also some of those other teams that may not necessarily have the best start, but they've got, some games scattered throughout the first however many game weeks you choose to plan against. Which could be worth consideration if you're a more aggressive styled FPL manager where you will make a trade for a couple of game weeks. I typically plan about 6 game weeks ahead. 4 to 6 is generally the recommended. I'd say anything past 6 is probably a bit too far out because too much can change after six game weeks, even though those game weeks may be closer together than normal. But anything less than 4 is, larger than 6 is too far. Anything less than 4 I think is a bit too short unless you're going for some quite aggressive plays. So what I've done is I've grabbed all the fixtures off the fantasy website. And I had a look through the Opta data and how they rank the teams and opponents and whatnot. And I didn't really like it too much, to be completely honest. I think they've put a lot of thought into the figures that they use to weight the opponents. But it doesn't seem to play out very well when you actually look at it and want to plan with it. So I use a couple of fixture tickers that are out there, but I don't quite like the colours. I like to see quickly at a glance exactly who's good and who's not, and some fixture tickers out there only use 2 colors and a varying range of lightness, so you might go from like a dark blue, which is easy, through to a light blue, which is becoming easier, and then light red through to dark red. What I've done here is I've just put the teams into 5 different categories. They're either a lethal opponent, a hard opponent, a medium opponent, an easy opponent, or a tame opponent. And then what I've done is I've defaulted based on last year's standings. The top 3 teams are all by default a lethal opponent, so anyone playing City, Liverpool or Chelsea, those 3 teams will be ranked as lethal. Then for the next 3, I've put into hard, which was Spurs, Arsenal and Man United. However, this is all the defaults, right? Then everything else is basically, all the other teams are mid-range teams, right the way down to about rank 17, I think, or 16 of last year. And I went 16, 17, 18 were easy opponents, because they almost got relegated last year. And then, 15, 16, 17, and then 18, 19, 20 are the 3 promoted teams, and they just default as tame opponents. But at the individual team level, I have adjusted a couple of values. So you'll see here Liverpool game week 3 on screen on the very top row. Man United is down as a blue, which is your medium coloured opponent. Typically Man United is a red, but in the case of Liverpool playing United, I've actually made, just for that one specific match, I've made Man United actually a medium opponent for Liverpool, because last year they lost 5-0 and 4-0 respectively. So, putting down Man United as a hard opponent, even though they beat half a Liverpool team with a whole bunch of kids in 3-0, and then for the last 30 minutes when Liverpool actually put on their top starting team, we won 1-0 with a counter-attack started by Bailly from centre back, running through the midfield and then playing in a couple of the kids who ran around Van Dijk and Robertson to slot the ball past Alisson. Well, actually, was Alisson still on goal there? I'm not too sure. But still, it was pretty great to watch. Like, a United supporter, our defence was horrible. Like, don't get me wrong, nothing much has changed there. But our attack, wow. the philosophy that Ten Hag has put into Man United and the way that we attack is just, woo, yeah. There's a picture up. I was watching, is it the United Stand, I think, podcast, and he just had a still image of one of the shots of Man United trying to attack, where we're halfway up our pitch. We've got two centre backs and split, but on the edges of the centre circle, basically. And then our wing backs are sitting right high up on the wings, right out wide, both unmarked, and the wingers have both tucked in, and there's like 5 across the back, and like this big sort of what kind of shape is that? Kind of like a crown, I suppose. So there's 2 and then out with like 5 across, and they use that quite a lot and to quite good effect. Anyway, that's whenever I talk about United, I always get off on a little bit of a tangent, but back to the fixtures. So in terms of colouring here, I've gone, the 5 colours are dark green is tame opponent, light green an easy opponent, blue is your medium opponent, then your light red and dark red. And what I've got on screen is an ordered list of the top teams with the best fixtures at the top for the first 4 game weeks. And you see right at the top is Liverpool and Man City, who placed first and second. Well, Man City placed first and Liverpool placed second last year, and they have a great run of the first 4 fixtures. So we should obviously be looking to load our game week 1 side up with the top 2 teams as best we can. Now, Liverpool's probably a little bit easier to pick from because we're a lot more assured of starts and where those points might come from. Man City's obviously a little bit harder. They have got a striker now in Haaland, as I think it's pronounced. So Foden will no longer be playing a false 9, so where he ends up playing for his 8 million price tag would be quite interesting. Mahrez out on the right at 8 million could be super interesting as well. I checked last year in terms, before the game reset, in terms of how Mahrez did in the first 6 or 7 games of last year, and I think he only started about 2 or 3 of them. So I don't know if that was situational given the shape of the team, or if Mahrez is always a UCL player as well, typically, so he plays all the UCL games but hardly ever gets prioritised for the Premier League. And even last year when they got knocked out of the Champions League, Mahrez still wasn't playing the Premier League team. So I don't know if that's just the tactics that they've employed, or maybe Pep's had a word with Mahrez and said, look, you're going to be used for Champions League, and if you get knocked out, tough shit, just play better. I don't know, but Mahrez is another one that you're about 8 million. Do you want to chuck him in your team? Not sure if he's going to even get the starts. If he does get the starts, he'll bang goals. He's a great player, but who knows whether he's going to get starts. Foden, who knows where he's going to be playing. He might be out on the wing now. Grealish at 7 million for a £100 million player. Surely he's going to get a lot more game time this season. But again, is he going to be effective? Like, what is Pep going to do with a proper striker up front? Like, how is the City formation going to change? So they also have West Ham first up, which I've actually tagged as a blue fixture, a medium opponent. Last season, have I got any City players up here? I don't. Last season, I'll just drop in Foden. Against West Ham, City won 2-1 at home and then drew 2-2 away. So they actually conceded 3 goals in 2 games against West Ham. Scoring 4, which is still great, but so there's definitely still FPL points out there on the table. Defenders, maybe, unless you got Cancelo, and Cancelo's you're not looking for clean sheets, you're looking for a clean sheets and attacking points, but maybe that West Ham game is a bit tricky. So potentially we're not loading up on maybe all 3 spots for Man City in that first game. But it gives us a chance to see how Man City will line up in the Premier League, and from after the West Ham game, they've got a great run of fixtures. So then Arsenal is ranked 3rd on the ticker for the first 4 game weeks, with Crystal Palace away first up. It's a tricky fixture. And then Leicester at home, second game, which is, again, kind of a tricky fixture. But then you've got Bournemouth and Fulham away and home, which are 2 promoted sides, so that's pretty decent. Now, Chelsea come in 6th on this fixture ticker when you're after Brentford, when you're looking at only 4 game weeks. And so what I wanted to show you is why I typically plan out to 6, because who was it? Someone down here's got a first 3 games, which isn't too bad, and a pretty West Ham, I think. So they go Man City, they're ranked 9th on the ticker. Man City first up, terrible game. Then they go Nottingham Forest away, Brighton at home, which I've tagged as a medium fixture. However, that is based on last year with Yves Bissouma in the team, and he did bits for them in midfield, keeping a lot of goals out away from the Brighton's 18-yard box, and they don't have Bissouma anymore, so Brighton might actually be a no longer a medium fixture, but for the start of the season we'll put them down as medium, and then they play Aston Villa away. However, if we chuck this up to like 5 game weeks, you see West Ham then have to play Tottenham. They've dropped down into spot 12th, and then if we go up to 6 game weeks, they're now down at spot 15th, because then they follow with Chelsea. So if you are considering West Ham players and you're only looking at a fixture ticker of the first 4 game weeks, or you are not planning any further out than the first 4 game weeks, you're not likely going to want to have any West Ham players against Tottenham and Chelsea in game weeks 5 and 6, and they play Man City up front first. So in the first 6 game weeks, they actually play City at home, Tottenham at home, and Chelsea away, which is not great. But those 3 fixtures in the middle could be a lot of points to be had for the likes of Bowen, and maybe Said Benrahma, potentially. He had a great start to the season last year. He's still priced at 6 million. Could be interesting. We need to see how West Ham... I haven't been following West Ham at all through the off-season. The only thing I knew is Declan Rice was being looked at by United for a little bit, I think, at like 100. West Ham was like, 150 million because they didn't want to sell him. So it's about all I've heard about West Ham from the off-season. I have to catch up on them. Obviously, they're so far down on the fixture ticker, I haven't really kept too much of a close eye on them. But those middle 3 games of Nottingham Forest, Brighton and Villa is a tasty run of 3 fixtures. So definitely something to keep an eye on. What you will also notice, though, is out to the first 6 game weeks, Liverpool and Man City are still top of the ticker. The 2 extra games that they have pushed into game week 5 and 6 is Newcastle at home and Everton away for Liverpool, and Nottingham Forest at home and Aston Villa away for Man City. So, I mean, the top 2 teams with the first 6 game weeks like that, we should be trying to have 6 squad members, 3 from each of these teams. Arsenal's still 3rd on the fixture ticker. Wolves sitting in 4th. Now, Wolves is quite interesting because they're one of the teams where there's a bit of bargains, and I will go into, having spent time looking at the fixture ticker, how my team is shaping up now. I've made a couple of switches. If you haven't seen the formation video that I dropped a few days ago, check that out. It's how I've arrived at starting the season with 4-5-1 formation, with 2 dead striker spots, and my 5th defender being my only bench option that can actually come in and play for me, being Tomiyasu, 4.5 mil at Arsenal. So in order to fill that formation, I've had to take some cuts, and I'm still playing around with a set of 3 players, which I'll go through in a minute. But for the first 6 game weeks, they're 4th on the ticker, and Wolves typically in the past have been a pretty good defensive side. They didn't have a great defensive season last year, but they do have good players. Like, Wolves is a solid team. Chelsea is 5th on the fixture ticker, so we've got the top 3 teams, 1st, 2nd and 3rd of last season, and the top 5 ranked teams for the first 6 game weeks for the next season. So we've really got to keep an eye on this, because these 3 teams are lethal, and that's where all these points are going to be coming from. And if we are not set up to cover Liverpool, City and Chelsea with those run of fixtures, we could get left behind at the start of the season very quickly if we are not set up to support that. And then in its 6th on the fixture ticker is Spurs, which I think they came 4th last year, 4th or Another great team. They've only got one tricky fixture really, which is Chelsea away in game week 2. And then the rest of them, I mean, West Ham away in game week 5 is not great, but they should still do okay there. Will they keep a clean sheet? Probably not. So your Spurs defenders maybe not so high on the priority list. I mean, Chelsea and West Ham and a home game to Wolves. I mean, Wolves could sneak a goal against Spurs. We'll have to see how Conte lines up with his new acquisitions across the transfer window. I'm very interested to see how Perisic gets placed in the team and how he is used. I'm anticipating him to be a late, arriving late in the box, back post, and picking up balls with a lethal shot. So he should, if that's where he ends up, rather than being the man that's delivering, he could be quite a keen option for the first 6 game weeks. So if we go out to 8 game weeks, now this is where we're getting a little bit too far out to plan, right? You don't really want to be looking at game week 8 at the first game week of the season going, oh, what am I going to do there? However, what you do want to keep in the back of your mind is, what would a wildcard team look like at the start of game week, say 6, 7 or 8? Now, that's always a good strategy to apply throughout the whole season anyway, so that you can see where you are and where a wildcard team will look like in 6 weeks. So if you don't have a template team, for example, and you're scrambling to catch up, maybe instead of catching up, you can start working towards what will be the future template so that you can get a run on the next players. So if we go out to game week 8, there will be a lot of wildcards being used game weeks 6, 7 and 8 this season, even more so than previous seasons. This is also already a pretty popular time for the first wildcard to be pulled. Quite often that's because people have gone with a couple too many risks in their team potentially, and you may have 2 or 3 players that didn't actually start a game, or some injuries, or you've just chosen the wrong players, or there are just 2 or 3 standout options that are just too cheap that you have to have in your squads. And this is why all those wildcards typically get pulled in the past, about game week 6, 7 and 8 on average as the highest game weeks. This season we've got the World Cup, which comes in game week 16, I think, somewhere around there. So our first wildcard this season has to be used before the World Cup, and after the World Cup starts, as soon as the Premier League stops and the World Cup and everyone leaves for their international World Cup duties, we get in basically a wildcard, which is unlimited free transfers for the whole time that the World Cup is happening. That in itself will be a whole strategy session in terms of player pricing, because across the 4, 5, 6 weeks that the World Cup is on, the market will still be in effect, and so prices will still be fluctuating in the background, and so you will need to be keeping an eye on that. That's something to worry about in the future. However, what it has said is it is forcing us to play a wildcard before the World Cup, and we get another wildcard during the wildcard during the World Cup. So what we will be aiming to do is dead end our teams into the World Cup run, typically, or you have a very strong option to do so. Dead ending a team typically means when there's about 3 or 4 game weeks left, you buy a player for one of those game weeks and sit them on the bench for the rest, because you're only targeting one fixture. You don't care about any of the other fixtures because you're going to get a brand new team in a few weeks' time. So it opens up all sorts of strategies around not having to plan too far forward when that World Cup kicks in. But it does flow backwards into the season to about game weeks 6 to 8, where a typical wildcard's already used, and that being already halfway through the first half of the season before the World Cup kicks off, might be a pretty popular time to take the wildcard as well. You don't want to be leaving it too late, because if you leave it too late, you don't get the full effects of that first wild card, because you may say you do it 5 weeks out from the World Cup, right? Brand new team for 5 weeks. There's only 5 weeks left, and then you're going to get another brand new team. So you've held a team, for the first 13 game weeks, when you could have used the wild card a whole bunch earlier and had a better last 3 or 4 game weeks. So there's going to be a lot of strategy about how teams are shaping up, which teams are overperforming, which teams are underperforming, how the fixture ticker is looking from game weeks 7 or 6, 7, 8 forward. So if we go back to future game week 6, but we start at game week 6, so we go to game week 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, you'll see a completely different ticker, right? We've got Nottingham Forest at the top of the ticker, promoted side. Then you've got Leicester sitting second. Very interesting team. James Maddison's coming at 8 million. So 8 million seems to be the price point this season for previous players that were floating around 7.5, which were actually pretty decent. James Maddison had a storming end to last year. Great player. On set pieces, got a wicked delivery. Can bang goals from open play as well. Great assister. He could be top of your list of players to be pulling in game week 6 if you're not keeping an eye on the future game weeks between 6 and 11. And that's why these fixture tickers are so important, and why it's very important to keep an eye on who's still sitting at the top. You'll see here Chelsea's still sitting up at 4th. I mean, their first half of the season's just fantastic. Like, they just sit high on the fixture ticker right the way through. Man City's dropped down to 9th because in that set of 6 game weeks they will have to play Tottenham at home and Liverpool away. They also have Man United at home, which I've got down as a medium fixture for City. It'll be hard for everyone else. And Wolves, who I have downgraded to an easy fixture for Man City, whereas they would typically be a medium opponent for most teams. So Wolves could even be bumped up to a medium, so they might even be slightly lower on this fixture ticker if I did adjust that rating. You'll also see Liverpool is dead down the bottom, 18th on the fixture ticker, where they play Everton away is a great game. Wolves at home, again, I've put down as an easy fixture, but Wolves still can put up a bit of a fight. Then they go away to Chelsea, home to Brighton's an okay game, away to Arsenal, tricky fixture, and then at home to Man City. Holy hell, this is horrific. So we may be looking at this set of fixtures to go Salah out, potentially. Maybe someone like, where's Spurs sitting? Spurs isn't sitting too high on the ticker, so we may be not looking at it like the likes of Son and Kane, although they do play Fulham, Brighton and Everton, although it's the first game, the 5th game and the 6th game, so the middle set of 3 of these is terrible. You might be looking at the likes of, Kevin De Bruyne from Man City to replace Salah, or maybe you just hold Salah through because Salah can score against anyone. He's just a goat. He hardly ever leaves my team anyway. But that was a mistake of mine last season. I should have got rid of Trent and Salah in about game week 35-ish, 34 last year, and distributed the funds, and did not. So I do not want to make that mistake again. So it is a good idea to keep an eye on what Liverpool is doing in the set of fixture tickers, and of course how they are playing throughout the season. So that's my very quick, brief overview of how I typically plan when I'm making transfers. I'm always looking at a 4 to 6 week schedule in future. I also use tools like fpl.team. I haven't put any of these tools into my website yet because I haven't had the time to build them. I've only built 3 pages for the FPL Specialist website, which I am constructing. We have the fixture ticker now, which I built yesterday. We've got a formation view, kind of like this. Still in development, it's not lined up, and it doesn't skip forward game weeks like this game does, which is quite nice. So when you fpl.team, Peter, who's developed this, I talked to him on Twitter a couple of times. He's great. He makes changes quick. It's very fluid site. It's very nice looking as well. Great tool to use. Highly recommend it. It's got this awesome thing where you can skip forward the game weeks, right? So you'll notice in my view, I've just got like a little fixture ticker underneath them. on the full team view, whereas this actually you could actually push your players in and out of the squad. So for the game week 2 here, I will this is not my game week squad, but let's just say I was playing with this. I would probably bench Perisic against Chelsea because Tottenham don't typically do too well against Chelsea. They always concede goals. And I'd be looking in this draft formation, which I left on fpl.team a few days ago, would have been playing Cash against Everton and Ben Rama against Nottingham Forest. So Ben Rama started game week 1 on my bench, I think, against Man City. Yeah. And Southampton, great fixture for Spurs first up. We play Perisic here. So these tools are great as well to kind of get a handle on what will my team look like if I made no trades. You can actually also make trades in this and it will remember them, which is great. So you can go to like game week 6 here and then swap out Coutinho, who's against Man City, and put someone else in. When you go back to game weeks, it'll remember your old team. Very good tool for planning. The other thing that I've chucked into this fixture ticker, just to give you a bit of an update on where it's at, it doesn't handle any double game weeks or blank game weeks yet, because the data from the fantasy side isn't coming out with double game weeks or blank game weeks, so I'm not entirely sure how they structure that data. I am having a guess in the background, and I will try to structure it that way so that we can make the fixture more effective for those. But I have slotted in the fixture, the game week start date at the top, so that you can see in game week 5, I think it is. No, game week 5. There's actually a midweek game. So game week 1's a Saturday, August the 6th, then August the 13th, August the 20th for game week 1, 2, 3. Then game week 4 is the 27th. Game week 5 is midweek, Wednesday the 31st. And then Saturday, September the 3rd. So you've actually got 3 games in the space of about 7 days. Game weeks 4, 5, and 6. So if you are planning to wildcard around then, do keep an eye on the fact that there is that midweek game and players will be a little bit more tired. The other things I want to add in here is Europa and UCL schedules, just so that we can see how busy some of these teams are going to be. So the likes of Liverpool, City, Chelsea, they will rotate more heavily around the UCL fixtures, depending on how far they are into the UCL fixtures, and the same with any teams sitting in Europa as well. So that will be added to the fixture ticker in future, but for now, it just start of the season, there's no double games to worry about, so we're all good there. Currently, my formation, I'll just show you on the site that I'm lining up with, having run through the fixture ticker, is looking like this. I've got still Raya in goal with Balcombe as the backup keeper. That has not changed. Brentford on the fixture ticker 7th for the first 6 game weeks, and when you're picking goalies, you really want to go out quite far. Brentford 4th on the fixture ticker for the first 9 game weeks for a 4.5 million goalkeeper who will keep some clean sheets. Brentford aren't terrible in defence, but he'll also get a lot of save points. Hopefully. Hopefully he saves more than he lets in. So, still Raya and Balcombe. Now, this could be potentially like a Melier from Leeds, but Leeds were ranked a lot lower on the in Premier League last year. I think they finished like 18th, 17th or 16th. So flirting with relegation, it's not something that I want to be jumping onto at the start. Like they'd have to turn it around quite a lot in pre-season. So I'm just going to go with someone who's a bit more proven. I think the XGI conceded stats for Raya is one of the top as well. So that's another thing that I will be chucking into the site. I'll be grabbing some Opta data to chuck in for XGI, expected goals and expected assists once I get the time. So at the back, I've still got Trent, Cancelo, and either James or Chilwell. Those 3 won't be changing before game week 1. I will need to make a decision on James or Chilwell. At the moment, I'm leaning towards Chilwell simply because he's more attacking. Whereas James is a bit more of a defensive-minded player. So if both players were playing, both James and Chilwell, if they were not injured, you will see Chilwell higher up the pitch and James doing a bit more defensive duties. Well, that's what we've seen in the limited minutes that Chilwell actually survived last season. But in the games that Chilwell did play, he looked lethal. He loves to shoot. He's always in the box. He delivers balls, floating around the place. He gets so far forward. He's like Alonso. It's actually very similar to Alonso. Just a better player though. Sorry, Alonso. And we've got Perisic in there at 5.5. That is one of the risks that I have sitting in this team. I am going with a risky formation start to the season where I'm actually going to kill both my forward spots and Plange and Force on the bench. Both 4.5 million players that will not play. I've chosen Force and Plange because they're selected so lowly by other teams around the place at 1.7% and 0.8% respectively. Their prices will not fluctuate. So they will not drop down to 4.4 million for a long time, which is, you do not want to lose value in those players. Very tricky to get that 0.1 million back if that so happens. So if you are looking at the likes of Greenwood from Leeds, he's quite a lot more owned, but he won't play. And so you will probably see, because he's quite high owned and not scoring points, that his price will take a hit early in the season. So keep an eye out on fpl.statistics.co.uk. They are the most accurate predictors of when the prices are going to change for these players. Prices change at midnight in England, and so it varies throughout the world, but these guys are pretty good at picking when a price is going to go up for these players, so they keep on top of those. They give a percentage rating of how likely these things are to happen. So not only keeping an eye on the players that are going up in price that you may be priced out of if you cannot purchase early season, also keep an eye on those at the bottom of the list that are going down in price, because if you've got any of those players, they might be the ones that you sacrifice to buy a better player, but you might have lost 0.1 million of them in the first 3 game weeks, and that detriments your future trade, and you are priced out of a player that you really want. So be aware of that. The reason I bring it up is because at the moment I'm still starting with Salah and Luis Diaz because I want 3 Liverpool, and Luis Diaz at 8 million is superb price. It's great. Haaland up front, he is not leaving my team for those City fixtures until he gets injured, which he probably will, but he is sitting there until he gets injured. Even if he blinks for the first 2-3 game weeks, he will still just be sitting in my side as he beds himself in. So the 3 spots that are really up for grabs in this team, and Tomiyasu will be my 5th defender. So the 3 spots that are really up for grabs is 3 midfield spots, which total 19.5 million. Nope, that's not right. Yeah, that is right. 19.5 because Foden's the same price. So at the moment I've got Kulusevski, Martinelli, and Neto in my 3 in the midfield. Now these are the 3 that I can change around a bit. I have had Coutinho instead of Kulusevski and spent that extra. Coutinho's $1 million cheaper at 7 million to change Neto up from a 5.5 to either a 6 and leaving 0.5 in the bank, or all the way through to someone like Rashford. Having watched the Man United game this morning, I will need to see more from Rashford. He didn't have a great game, but the style of play that Man United are playing will fit Rashford's set of skills. So once he gets over whatever's happened to Rashford, I suspect something going on in the background. Potentially with a new style of play, a much more attacking style, which he likes. He likes running at players, and that's looking like the style of play that Ten Hag is drilling into us based on our first game. He could be a great option at 6.5 if he can get himself together. Or you could jump forward to Sancho, 7.5. Very cheap price for a United player. All the United players are underpriced if they can get their act together. Just stay well clear of their defense, because the defense still looked terrible. I mean, yeah, we had a lot of the ball because of the high press, and we it looked amazing. I love watching teams that high press. But whenever we didn't have the ball and we were under a bit of pressure from a half-assed Liverpool team full of kids, we still looked like we were struggling. So any Premier League team will destroy that defense at the moment, unless something changes quickly. So I just stay well clear of that. However, it does look like we're going to score a lot of goals based on the way that we play. Like there's a lot of overloads, so could make for some very very interesting football. However, at the moment, what I have landed on as the three in midfield is Kulusevski. That's simply because of that Southampton game first up to cover the likes of Son and Kane, who are the people are looking at potentially starting with Kane instead of Haaland up front because of that Southampton game week 1. But they played Chelsea game week 2. Last season at home, Spurs lost 3-0 to Chelsea on September 20th. You can see on screen. And then away, they lost 2-0 to Chelsea. So they conceded 5 and scored 0. Now, this is why I don't want to be playing Perisic game week 2. Because the likelihood is they are going to concede. And they don't look like they know how to break Chelsea down too effectively. Kulu was only there, I think. I don't actually know if he was in the team for that home game against Chelsea. He was definitely there for the January game. So whether or not Kulu has, I mean, Kulu didn't have like a whole pre-season. He didn't have the specific training and drilled bits. He came into a team that was already fluid and working and did quite well. So with a full pre-season behind him and Conte at the helm, 8 million for him could be an absolute steal. So Martinelli's basically been in most of my drafts because Arsenal's run so great. Martinelli did seem to be first choice over Emile Smith-Rowe last season and was quite an attacking player and looked quite dangerous. I had him for parts of the season. He did quite well for me. So it could be him. Smith-Rowe is the same price but probably won't have the minutes, and Odegaard is 0.5 million more expensive and also doesn't seemingly have as many avenues to points. He should do playing as Cam for Arsenal. Maybe it's just that last year Arsenal weren't clicking together and Jesus may change that for them this year up front. And if they buy someone like Rafinha, if that's still on the cards, I don't know if that's still flitting around in the background, could be a brand new Arsenal looking attack, and we may have to reassess Martinelli and whether or not we do swap out Kulu for the likes of Saka or actually bring in a Rafinha or something. But at the moment it's Martinelli. And one of the highest owned 5.5 million players in the game, at Neto, coming in as my tentative third spot in midfield. I am not overly keen on starting the season with Neto. I would much prefer to get him up to a 6 million playing player. Maybe someone like Bruno Guimaraes from Newcastle. Maybe one of the United boys, although they're a bit more expensive. Elanga's coming at 5 million if he starts. That would be insane price. He probably won't though. But there are a few options around the 6 to 6.5. However, I just can't fit it in with that extra 8 mil spot. Now, this is what I'm tossing up at the moment on how my team is going to be structured. So I'm pretty currently set on my defense. James or Chilwell, still not sure, but it will be one of the two. Perisic will be starting the season for sure, and Cancelo, Alexander-Arnold going nowhere in my team. And Tomiyasu is the best priced 4.5 million option on the bench. So I don't see this changing unless there's injuries. Or, maybe Spurs just look horrible or something, I don't know. But that defense is pretty locked in. I can't go any cheaper up front because I've got the cheapest possible 2 subs and Haaland, who's going nowhere. And so my only options are in midfield to fool around with. Now, the 8 million options, there's a lot of them. You've got Luis Diaz, is a great price at 8 mil. Mason Mount at 8 mil. Kulusevski at 8 mil. Saka at 8 mil. James Maddison at 8 mil. I mean, there's a lot of options out there and they're all really good players. So my thoughts for starting the season at the moment is I'm going to go with 2 8 million options and Neto at 5.5 for a couple of reasons. Wolves' start to the season is actually pretty decent overall. Neto could do alright against Leeds, Fulham, Newcastle and Bournemouth. The game against Tottenham, probably not, but he's a 5.5 million option. I could play Tomiyasu that week, who's playing Bournemouth away. So that's why Tomiyasu is so key to be on the bench, and especially given Arsenal's run of fixtures. I mean, he can come. He's the third on the fixture ticker out to game week 9. And then game week 10 they drop to 6 when they play Liverpool. But for that first run of fixtures, if you need to pull someone off the bench, Tomiyasu at 4.5 mil, you could pull in against any of these games. You could even play him against United if you really wanted to. I mean, you probably should choose someone else, but if you had to, you could, because who knows what's going to happen there, right? So Neto against this run of fixtures could do okay. He could do similarly well to the 6 million options, is what I've boiled it down to. So he could score the same as a 6 million option at 0.5 cheaper, and that 0.5 cheaper does allow me the second 8 million spot in the team. And at the moment, it could be either Mason Mount away to Everton or Kulusevski at home. Is it home to Southampton? I think it is. Yeah, home to Southampton. However, Spurs play Chelsea game week 2, and so I will be selling Kulu instantly, and I will need to make sure that whatever 8 million or less option, if I do choose another, the reason I've got two 8 million options is I can jump to another 8 million option at whim, as long as the prices haven't changed. So this is another reason why I keep an eye on FPL statistics so early in the season, because right at the start of the season, the prices do fluctuate quite quickly. In older seasons have passed, they didn't. It took a while for those prices to kick in, but in the last 2 seasons, the market has actually changed quite a lot. It might be because there's a whole bunch of extra players now, and potentially they haven't adjusted their market forces for that. I don't know, but the prices do change quickly. So if I want to go from Kulu to say Saka, got to keep an eye on Saka to make sure Saka doesn't go up to 8.1 million and I can't do it and have to drop all the way down to a 7.5 million option or less. Or also that Kulusevski doesn't go from 8 million to 7.9 and then I'm priced out of all the 8 million options. So it does come with the risk that I may need to make an early transfer, which may be why I'm leaning a little bit more towards Mount, because that Everton game is still good, and Chelsea against Tottenham in game week 2 is a better game than Spurs vs Chelsea. I would back Mount more than I would Kulusevski, and Chelsea are playing at home. So if you had to hold a player for that week, I mean, I wouldn't want to play Mount against Tottenham ideally, but they do play Leeds the following week, then Leicester, which is not great, but then Southampton, then West Ham, which is not easy, but then Fulham. It's a bit of a higgledy-piggledy mix. Chelsea, a great team, so they could score against anyone. But Arsenal, after game week 2, go Bournemouth, Fulham, Villa, then United, and then Everton. So Saka's looking like a really good option from game week 3. So the reason I've structured my team this way is it does give me the flexibility to jump off of one 8 million option to any other 8 million option, as long as the market hasn't changed and I am on top of the ball. But also, an 8 million option can jump down to anyone. So you can go back to Coutinho and have a mil in the bank, or you can go down to, say, Sancho at 7.5, have half a mil in the bank, or go all the way down to like a 6 million option if you want to upgrade elsewhere. However, I think there's so many good players in that 8 million price bracket that we really should be trying our best to get those players in. The other option I could do here is dropping Perisic down to someone like Cash at 5 million or a Trippier at 5 million. Two very attacking players as well, but they won't keep as many clean sheets as Spurs, and so that's why that extra $500,000 is worth a spend at the start of the season. So if you have liked that content, like the video please, go on, click that button. If you do want to hear more content like this and see how this FPL specialist site is developing along the way, click that subscribe button so you get notified about the latest content coming out. And also give me a little bit of feedback on about how your teams are lining up and what tricks or tools you have found to the different formations. So I'm really honing in on the 4-5-1 formation because I think that's where the most value is at the moment. But it is quite a risky play because I have only one bench member. A lot of other managers won't be quite that risky, and so they will be lining up with all sorts of different formations: 4-5-2, 5-3-2. I've seen even some formations out there with 2 in the midfield. Boggles my mind considering there's so much value in midfield, but hey, maybe there's something that I'm overlooking there. So thanks for sticking around throughout the video. If you do like the content, yes, again, please do hit that like button. I need to ask a couple times because we need those likes up. But yeah, I'll catch you around sometime soon, and good luck for the next few days with whatever you're tinkering about with out there, what tools you're using. If you're finding other tools out there like the fpl.team, definitely go over to fpl.team, have a look at that site, it's great. Follow Peter on Twitter. He's pretty good at responding with anything to do with the site. If you found that you might want something that's not quite working, he responded quite quickly, or maybe even some additions if you want. Yeah, anyway, I'm waffling. Thanks for sticking around for the video, and I will hope to catch you again sometime soon.